Well, with her response to the strike now underway by the PSAC, we're joined by Mona Fortier, President of the Treasury Board. Madam Fortier, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we just spoke with the President of the PSAC, and he says this strike is necessary in part because your government has been, and this is his words, dragging its feet in negotiations, only really coming to the table in the last couple of weeks. How do you respond to that?
Well, first, thank you for having me today, and I know Canadians are worried, and I'm here to, of course, make sure that they're confident that we are working at the table, both parties. And I have to say that last year at this time we tabled our first offer, and PSAC walked out of the table. So 2 weeks ago, we decided to go back in mediation, and we've been working really hard, and I am confident that we will get to a deal, that it will be competitive wages, fair wages for public servants, and also reasonable for Canadians.
Well, I'll talk about wages in a moment, but I do want to continue with some reaction here, because we also heard very quickly out of the gate last night the federal NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh, saying that what we're looking at here is a failure of your government to listen to the concerns of government workers expressed nearly for 2 years now. Why has it come to this point?
Well, again, I have to repeat, last year we did table wages and PSAC chose not to continue the talks, and we got back to the table 2 weeks ago in mediation, and I think that we all have a common purpose here, we all have a common goal, is how best are we going to deliver services to Canadians, and that is what we're working on. That's the common ground that I believe we have. Now, we do have different ideas, and that's where negotiations take place. And we're putting all of our efforts, both parties, all of our efforts to get to a deal.
Now, again, from the union, they're saying when it comes to the discrepancy in terms of wages, what they really are asking for are salaries, wages that reflect the money that they're now paying for groceries, rent, mortgages. Really, at a time when many Canadians are struggling, they say they're no different, and they just want fair wages to reflect their challenges in real life. How do you respond to that?
Well, I respond that there has been a PIC report, what we call the Public Interest Commission, that recommended for a fair wage would be 9%, and that's what we tabled, and that's what we're working on. And this would recognize the work that public servants are doing in their different jobs, and also determine that it would be reasonable for Canadians. Therefore, we are taking that recommendation and putting it forward, and I think that we have to be really confident that we are in a better space economically, as we see the Bank of Canada showing that inflation is going down and 3% looking out very soon. Therefore, we're looking also how those wages can come and continue to support Canadians.
So is it just the wages at this point? Is everything else agreed to, and it's just the wages that remain the sticking point here?
There are different issues. You probably heard one, telework, for example, is something that is being discussed. And of course, I will say that it's a management right from the offset. It's important to know that public servants have the opportunity to work from home 2 to 3 times a week. The fact that also we're looking at what's happening elsewhere, other jurisdictions, and we're following exactly what's happening across the country. And I think that, you know, telework is a good way to, of course, offer services to Canadians, but we need to make sure that hybrid model is also where people can work together at the same location and manage how best we can serve core services to Canadians.
Core services. In the meantime, we do have roughly 100,000 people leaving the office, joining picket lines right now because of this strike. How will that affect Canadians? What will your government do to try to compensate for the slowdown in work?
So right now, as you know, there are essential services that continue. For example, Child Canada benefit, veterans income supports, AI, all of those services will continue. Other services, of course, will be disrupted. It won't be business as usual. And we'll monitor, of course, how this affects Canadians. But the most important thing is I'm hoping that we can get a deal as soon as possible so we can get back to offering all services to Canadians and be back business as usual.
A deal as soon as possible. I hear
Yes.
that, but of course, you also know right now, many are wondering very loudly if this government would use back-to-work legislation if this drags on. I guess if you deem so, too long. So, would your government, even though it talks about workers' rights and also bringing in anti-scab legislation, would your government bring back-to-work legislation as a possibility, or are you going to avoid that?
I'm right now focusing, because we're at the table, to get a deal done at the table. That is where all of my energy is. Even the Prime Minister and I were discussing, and we're putting all of our efforts there, and that's what we'll be doing, negotiating at the table to get to the deal.
Now, where are those negotiations? At this point, you say you're at the table, but are you going to go into the night? Is this something that will go on, or what are you looking at over the next few days?
Well, we've been at the table for 2 weeks, and now, of course, respecting the fact that PSAC decided to go out and strike. The good news is they're still at the table, and we're there working very hard and from morning to night, and we will continue that pattern, hopefully, until we get a deal.
Mona Fortier, it's been a busy day for you. I really appreciate the time. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you.